Alone, dark, cold. Feelings we are all exposed to at some stage in our lives. For some children in South Africa, this is not just a passing sensation. The state of our children in South Africa today has reached pandemic proportions. In South Africa, there are around 18.5 million children, of which 60% are estimated to live below the poverty line. More than 87,000 children live in child-headed households. An excess of 4 million children are orphaned or live in foster and state-owned establishments. In 2014, 21,000 school-going girls were reported pregnant, of which 700 were still in primary school, while the number of abandoned children appears to be on the increase. Fortunately, it doesn't always have to be that way.
Abba Adoptions, good morning. How may I help you? You going through? Fine.
Abba Specialist Adoption and Social Services, known informally as Abba Adoptions, has been in existence since 1996 and is a designated child protection organization accredited to render both national and inter-country adoption services and facilitates a wide variety of adoption and child protection services in relation to abandoned and orphaned children, birth parents, and adopting parents. In South Africa, we are confronted with a high number of unplanned pregnancies. If more women had the support of their community and access to options counseling, more women would make responsible decisions. We believe that birth parents making a decision towards adoption should receive holistic care.
I need help. I'm pregnant. And I don't know what I should do with this pregnancy.
Although a big part will be spent on adoption counseling and the adoption process, it is important to assist the client in a more holistic manner. It is also important to be ethical and responsible in your service delivery. We believe this area is of a very sensitive nature since it will have permanent implications on the birth parents, birth family, adoptive child, and adoptive parents. After all options have been explored and the birth mother makes an adoption choice, we make sure that they get emotional, psychosocial, physical, as well as legal counseling and support. We also make it a priority to include the birth father and the extended family.
I think I still have to consider the options that we have just discussed with me because if I remember correctly, we talked about foster care, that it's a temporary, and then we talk about adoption, and then we also talk about me just to go and looking in my family.
Once the adoption decision has been made, the birth mother's active involvement in the process is encouraged. We make it our priority to record as much info as possible for origin and record purposes. Assisting the mother with reintegration into her community forms part of our extended holistic services. However, for various reasons, not all birth mothers have access to this type of support or services and end up abandoning their children.
Abandonment is a big reality in South Africa. It happens on a daily basis, and we deal with it a lot. Abandonment, there's different kinds of abandonment that we see. So we see the harsh kinds of abandonment, where babies are left in dangerous places where it's very likely that they will die if they're not found in time. So toilets, gutters, dustbins. Then softer kinds of abandonment where the baby has been left somewhere intentionally by the mother where the baby will be found and will be helped. So baby safes at baby homes where they have that option. At the hospital after the mother gives birth to the baby. There are a lot of different reasons that a mother might abandon a child. She might not feel she will be in the financial position to take care of a baby. It's an unplanned pregnancy. She might fear being judged by her family and friends and so she might be concealing the pregnancy, and therefore she would have to abandon the baby so no one finds out.
There are many obstacles to adoption, one being cultural, which is not always looked upon in a favorable light.
The people are still negative about adoption. They name it throwing your baby away. They name it selling your baby. It is not easy to tell someone that they must not look negatively at a person who is considering adoption. It is because they don't know. They're not familiar with adoption and the process of adoption. And that is where we also come in, to come in and educate them about the process of adoption, that it is not a matter of the biological mother coming in and exchanging her baby for something. In the community as well, there is that negativity about adoption. They have the culture of blood, looking after your own blood. The culture of the value of keeping the child in the family, because then if the child is in the family, then the child is protected. If the child is in the family, then it's protected by the family and it is protected by the ancestors. And when the baby moves away from the family, then that baby has no identity. What we also do is, while we are trying to educate them, we also try to get them to move away from the judgment towards the biological mothers who are actually considering adoption. I think we still have a long way to go in educating our people about the concept of adoption.
In view of these obstacles, Abba, along with many other child protection organizations and the National Adoption Coalition of South Africa, has launched countless marketing and awareness initiatives to increase knowledge and promote adoptions in a positive light. Although we still have a long way to go, we have started to see an increase in the number of local South Africans open to adopt. Children legally admitted into the system are placed in registered temporary places of care pending their permanency planning and/or adaptability assessment. All temporary places of care within the Abba network are run with the best interest of the child in mind. Their focus is quality care.
When a baby is admitted into our care, there's a great deal of excitement between the staff and the caregivers, as well as a house mother. But it's also risky. I think when you admit a new baby into your care, you realize the full responsibility that you are the one who is going to take care of that child. But a lot of it, I think, is just excitement and thankfulness that this child has found their way to you, where you know that you can provide them with care and with love. The length of a baby's stay in the baby home is very much dependent on legal procedures. In terms of what needs to happen via the courts and through medical procedures is also quite extensive. The first thing that we take care of in the baby home is obviously to provide the children with their physical needs first, and that means to make sure that their nutrition, their health care and their physical needs are met initially. But that's not all that's important to us. The fact that our baby home is set up to be as intimate as possible is important. We want our children to feel that they're in a home and not in an institution. We always encourage playing with the children, cuddling them, holding them when they're fed, because it's really important that they also experience what it's like to be loved. When a baby is admitted to our home, the first step is to have them seen by our local pediatrician. It's very important to us that we know exactly where we stand with that child in terms of their medical status. Furthermore, we make use of the local clinic to keep our children's immunizations up to date, which is also really, really important to us. And then the third aspect of medical care is making use of specialists such as occupational therapists or speech therapists for the older children to make sure that they're on par with their developments. Keeping record of developmental milestones is probably one of the most important things that we do. We measure our children's head circumference once a week, as well as weighing them once a week. And we do this because it will be the quickest way that you can pick up that something is not okay with the baby. Our pediatricians keep very thorough records of what is happening with the children, how they are progressing, and they will then also review our records and those from the clinics to make sure that children are progressing as they should be. As a house mother, I think you are the first person to really grow to know a child. Having been the one to spend the most time with that child, you get to know their personality, and this is very important in matching. You need to be the one to convey to the social workers what type of child that is, whether they're introverted or extroverted, or what their fears are, what they enjoy, and in that way they could provide very important information to the matching team. What kind of family would be most suitable to them, for example. The day of placement is a variety of emotions. It can really range from one end of the spectrum to the other, but knowing that this child has been provided with a forever family who will love them provides a sense of peace and a very warm sense of thankfulness that this child has been matched with a family who will be able to provide them whatever they need in their future. After placement feedback is very important as a sense of closure to a house mother, but because of the fact that often we can feel very sad or experience a sense of loss when children leave our homes, it's always good to know that our babies have found a family where they're happy.
If we go to the register for adoptable children in South Africa, at the moment we have around 450 children that are legally available for adoption and are in need of permanent adoptive families. Now, if you talk about the profile of those children, we are mostly speaking about babies over the age of 6 months, mostly Black South African children. Around 7% of these children are dealing with some form of special need, or either being HIV positive. And most of these children, I would say over 50%, are children that have been abandoned.
According to the Register of Adoptable Children and Prospective Adoptive Parents, RACAP, there are on average 550 children legally ready and in need of adoptive parents. The unfortunate reality is that there is a complete disconnect between these numbers and the number of screened and registered adoptive parents in South Africa. An important part of adoption is therefore the recruitment, screening, and preparation of adoptive parents for the children on our records.
The Children's Act prescribes who are eligible to adopt in South Africa, and basically it requires that you need to be, first of all, a fit and proper person. Secondly, you must be willing and able to undertake the care of the child, and thirdly, you must be over the age of 18. And then very importantly, you have to be assessed by an adoption social worker as to these factors. Now, the assessment by the adoption social worker is the crucial part of who eventually would be then eligible or suitable to adopt a child. And that assessment will focus holistically on the adoptive parent's ability to parent, life experience, interpersonal relationships, support, level of maturity and integrity.
Adoptive parents undergo an intense screening process. This covers their eligibility, motivation, intra- and interpersonal functioning, their background, occupational and financial well-being, as well as their social environment. We also emphasize the importance of equipping adopting parents by involving them in an adoption preparation course. The purpose of this intense preparation is to firstly prepare the adoptive parents for the challenges ahead, as well as discuss issues uniquely related to adoption and ultimately to prevent disruptions of adoption.
A lot of people are discouraged to start the adoption process because it almost sounds like an impossible process. And I don't think it's impossible, but it's definitely a difficult journey. And the reason therefore is that the rights and responsibilities of birth parents are actually permanently terminated, being taken away from them and being given to the adoptive parents as if this child was born from them. So therefore the reason for strict legislation and processes to ensure that the best interest of this child will be served. Race definitely plays a role in adoption on different levels. And I think if you look at, once again, the triad, we look at the parents, the adoptive parents, and they come with a specific personal motivation and wish. It has also been shown in research that the preference of parents in terms of the profile of child they adopt do have a significant impact in the success of the adoption. Therefore, we take into account the race and culture of a child when we do a matching, and prefer to place a child in the same race and same culture group. However, if there's not a family in the same race and culture group as this child, we will not delay this child's right to permanent family care.
So where do we start as a person that might have the desire or the wish to adopt a child? And I think it's very important that you start with yourself in your own world and the people within your world. Explore your motivation, your reason, that's very important. Talk to your family, talk to people that are important to you. Get their input. Do your homework, do research, find out about adoptions, read about it, go onto the internet, get as much as possible information so that you know what you're getting into. Get relevant information about who may render these services. In South Africa, we've got specific service providers that are accredited that may render adoption services. Not any social worker can do that. Adoptive parents often, due to the fact that they have been struggling to fall pregnant and to get a family, are pitfall to difficult ethical situations, and they sometimes are approached by young desperate birth mothers directly, trying to engage them in adoption and all kinds of difficult situations. And I think it's very important to get the factual information so that when you start the process, you do it in accordance with the legal requirements and with a model of good practice.
Every aspect of the adoptive process is aimed at making sure the child's best interest comes first. Matchings are done from a child's need and rights perspective. We are focused on finding the best possible family for each specific child and do not find a child for a family.
He's still on rap camp. So we went on the 19th of May.
I have a family, possibly.
Okay.
You can have a look. This family event, I told you about them, that I will bring a family this week. Open for a boy up to 8 months, but as young as possible. Boy, that's yeah. Let me tell you about this family.
Due to the previously mentioned disconnect between available adoptive parents and adoptable children, we are faced with an excess of adoptable children not finding forever families in South Africa. This reality led to the establishment of working agreements with foreign contract partners in accordance with the Hague Convention to facilitate inter-country adoptions. Of the number of registered adoptions in South Africa annually, only 20% are inter-country. This is a strict prescribed legal process, closely monitored, of which only a small handful of organizations are accredited by the relevant South African authority.
The nerves kicked in about 10 o'clock last night.
The child's roots are paramount to who they are. Yes, they belong to the family wholeheartedly, but they are also South African, and this needs to be acknowledged and supported as much as the child needs it. Post-adoption support is as important as the adoption process itself. Forever families have an extensive support base for parents adopting from South Africa, where they can network, share struggles and triumphs, as well as stay in touch with other families who have been through similar experiences. Of the post-adoption responsibilities that the adoptive family face, One is a 2-year letter and photo agreement where the adoptive family is encouraged to send back photos and letters showing the birth parents the progress, joys and struggles their children are going through. The other is the official 5-year annual reports that are compiled and sent to Abba Adoptions for the child's file. The one adventure that looms ahead is the Roots trip back to South Africa. It is during this time that many families actually venture back to South Africa for holiday visits and exploratory adventures where their kids can see, smell, and taste that land from which they were born, South Africa. Kids are prohibited by South African law from tracing and making contact with their biological family up till the age of 18. When that day comes, however, many emotions may or may not present themselves, and it is here where Abba Adoptions is there to lend a helping hand once again.